Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke, and this is our little daily get-together, I guess you would call it, where we talk about different topics, usually topics related to my coaching practice, but things that are coming up. Good morning, Melissa. The different topics that are connected to my coaching practice, and also to things that I can do. Good morning, Sam. Things that are. Sorry, I'm just sort of introducing everything. Everybody's jumping in like right at the beginning, which is great. I'm going to be talking about. I talk about different things that are certainly connected to my practice, and also to certain things that are going on, not only for myself but also for people around me. I'm somebody who. I'm trying to remember the name of the gate, but there's one of the gates in human design that has to do with people who look for patterns all the time. And I'm one of those people. That's one of the reasons I'm really good at comparative lit and stuff like that, is because, and even the way I do my podcast, I tend to look at certain stories and symbols and go, oh, that's kind of like this and this. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're connected all the time, like in terms of one coming from the other. But I do make a lot of connections with things. So what I find is that, and I've talked probably too much in the last couple weeks about field theory, and about the way in which, like I talk about Alan Watson, the way he would talk about the fact that the interconnectedness of everything, the Wu Wei, and the way that we are, that we don't exist in a vacuum, and a lot of times we tend to feel that the world is on our shoulders and we have to do everything ourselves. But the reality is that we are actually part of a larger system. So when I feel like things are going on, inevitably I'll start getting the phone calls, or I'll get the texts, or the WhatsApp messages, or the DMs, or whatever it is, from people who will be like, oh my God, do you know what happened this week? And it's funny because I'm always amazed at how, while we're not talking about the exact same stuff going on, a lot of it is very, very similar. And so I think, wow, it's like we're all, you could talk about astrological influence, which I think is certainly part of the picture. One thing that I picked up on yesterday, I happened to run across a video, and I'm a big believer in synchronicity too. I think that there are such things as meaningful coincidence. And I feel like so I do think sometimes I'll see things. This is also the reason, like when you go on YouTube and there's 8 jillion like tarot channels, right? And you have readers that will do certain things, and you'll say, okay, well, I don't even know. And the readers might all be saying different things, but there might just be one that just kind of grabs your attention and you find yourself watching it. And oftentimes I always feel like these are the things, you might watch that reader a week later and they may have nothing to say to you, but this time for some reason they have something to say. So what I came across yesterday was a video about the effects of, there was a recent planetary alignment that happened on June 3rd, which was Monday. And the way that planetary, it was literally like there were, what was it? It was Mercury, I don't remember if it was Venus. It was Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. I think those were the ones. I'm not sure. Venus might have been part of it as well. But they were all in a straight line. Like they were all lined up in the same side behind, by the sun. Really kind of behind the sun there in Gemini. And they were talking about the kinds of effects that particular configuration, and not even just on the day that it happened, the kind of lingering effects of it. People having headaches, people having stomach upset, people having increased amounts of anxiety, potentially for no reason, but sometimes it could just take something that is already maybe a stressful situation and magnifying it. And, oh, good morning, Alex. It's kind of like it magnifies everything. And so there was a lot of this energy, that's been around this week. And I feel, at least for some people who have been going through certain things, I felt like that really sort of helped explain at least part of it, because I said, okay, good morning, Sudha. So this particular configuration that we had on Monday, because it just seemed like everybody was really, really ramped up, myself included. I mean, I had my moments where I was just really like, oh my God, I don't know, just really catastrophizing and thinking about things in a very big way. And so it was just, I don't know, it was just a really that was the beginning of a very interesting week. But of course, there's also, I don't want to suggest that the whole thing was a negative thing, because it's not. It's actually a planetary configuration that is very, very good. It actually has the potential to open up and to expand. But you do have some competing elements, like you have Saturn and Neptune, for example. They're both in Pisces right now. And those of you, depending on where your Pisces is, mine happens to be like between the 9th and the 10th house. So that's been a real challenge because you have like a lot of ideas and you have a lot of imagination, and Saturn's like, Saturn's the one who wants to pour the cold water on it and say, okay, well, so what are you going to do? What are the facts behind here? What are the numbers? What do you need to do to make this happen? What are you going to do to make this a reality? And you find that a lot of that energy sometimes, because there's such different energies, they can work together. You can use that energy to manifest what it is you're trying to manifest, but a lot of times they also clash too, because it's like we're continually challenged to keep our feet on the ground, with regardless to what we're doing. Not in the sense of cutting our imagination off. You don't want to do that either. You don't want to say, oh well, I'm just going to stick to the facts and what's in front of me necessarily. I think this is a time when people need to be thinking differently and dreaming big. Just because something doesn't appear to be possible right now doesn't mean that it won't be possible. But nonetheless, we don't want to squelch all our possibilities by going, oh well, that would be nice to do, but I have X, Y, and Z situation, so therefore I can't do anything about it. I can't do anything with it, and that's it's not really. That's not the way you want to go either. So that was interesting. I happened to catch that video yesterday about that and about all of the side effects, both mental, emotional, and physical, of feeling this way. Right now, the excuses aren't working with Saturn right now. Yeah, exactly. No, I know what you're saying, because when you try to. There's a tendency, I think, towards escapism too. We sometimes when we have a lot of things, we try to go, well, I'm not going to think about that, and I'm not going to look at that, and it's a weird balancing act, because on the one hand, you don't want to sit there and ruminate. I think is the right word. You don't want to ruminate on something to the point that you just get yourself very, very anxious and think about all the worst possible outcomes. On the other hand, you don't want to be so ungrounded and so pie in the sky that you're not really seeing what the real challenges are, or what it is that you need to do. Or alternately, it could be that you have some great ideas, but maybe now is not the time to implement them. Maybe there's other stuff that has to be done first. Maybe stuff we'd rather not be doing right now. This is the kind of stuff that we have to clean up, or the things that have to be sorted before we can move ahead. Because sometimes we're challenged and we're not able to move ahead. Saturn also makes things go very, very slowly at times. It's the idea that what you build slowly instead, quality over quantity, right? It's what you build slow and steady is the thing that's going to last for you, and that's the idea. But when we're in the middle of something, very excited about it and are ready to take off with it, and then when you get this slowing down energy, it's very frustrating. You almost feel like you're driving your car really fast, and then you got to slam on the brakes. And you know how that is, and then all the expletives that come after you do that, as to what's actually slowed you down. But this is the thing, and it's interesting because this morning, two other things this morning. Well, one was that I had, you might see behind me, I have another portal set up. I had taken it down, and then I kind of got the message like put it back up again. So I'm not really sure what that's about yet, but anyway, I've put it up. But one of the cards that comes up, this is in the Lemurian Oracle, and it's called the Furred and Feathered Friends. So it's about, it's about animals, obviously. And so it can be about our relationship to animals, but it also is kind of about looking for messages in animals. And it's weird, because after I put that up, I looked outside, and there were 3 blue jays, and I could hear this crow, and I kept hearing this crow all morning during my meditation, and I was like, and like I said, I'm very connected to Morrigan energy, and she's a goddess represented by a crow. So I was like, okay, what's that about? And I just pulled a card because I was just trying to get it, from this deck, and I got the Burden card. And I don't know, do I have that one? Yeah, I do have it right here. I had the burden card, right? And this is I've shown this one before. This is the idea of this woman like riding, or this whoever this figure is, riding on this person's back, and this person's trying to climb a hill, and this person sort of like mush, like driving them along. And what that card means, of course, is you need to clear your space of these people who are people who are making demands on you unreasonably, or people who are trying to get into your space and your energy and your head that you don't, that are just confusing the issue, and they're not muddying the waters, I guess, so to speak. So I had, so it was so odd because after I did that, there were 3 blue jays and this crow just came in. And I know crows do this as a natural thing, but all of a sudden, and I've not seen, I see blue jays in my yard all the time, or the neighbor's yard. I see crows in the yard all the time. But I've not seen this. This crow just came in and literally was like pushing all the blue jays out. And as far as an omen goes, that's generally an omen that, that there's, I feel like in this case, the crow was coming in. It's funny, we're talking about Saturn. It's like that influence that's coming in and breaking up all of the deceptive energies, because oftentimes blue jays come up when there's a miscommunication or there's a deception. I kept hearing in my head like there's something like either gossipy about it, or just, things that are learned through rumor and not really established through fact, or not established through evidence, things that actually lead us down the wrong path or make us think the wrong things. So I just kind of felt like this was this energy just coming in and breaking all of that up. So I thought that was interesting, and especially since I'd gotten a card that said, pay attention to what animals are doing this morning. So that was really interesting today. And and this morning, as I was preparing for this, the card that came into my head, I had there's a deck that I don't use very often. I've had it for years. It's called the Mother Peace Round Tarot, and it's kind of a feminist tarot deck. And it's not that there's things about that deck that I like. There's a very strong. There is that strong, very feminist kind of energy in kind of in a way that's meant to be a bit more primal or a bit more tribal, I suppose, in the way that the imagery is constructed on the card. But I don't know, for whatever reason, it's not a deck that I gravitate to a lot. I think I bought the version of the deck that I have back in the 1980s. And I use it occasionally. Occasionally I will use it on this channel, and I will do things with it. And some people really, really like this deck. When I've gone to Glastonbury, and if I've had readings there, I often see that they use this deck a lot. The readers in Glastonbury, at least the ones that I've been to, have favored the Mother Peace deck. So there is a card there, though, and I feel like it connected with this week's energy. It popped into my head over and over again, and I thought, okay, I'm going to pull this card out, and I'm going to show it today. And that is this card. This is the 5 of Pentacles in the Mother Peace deck, and it is known as the Making Tortillas card. Okay, so you have the woman here who is making tortillas, and the actual meaning of the card is, this person is doing something repetitive to take energy and keep it from turning into worry. Okay, because we know the 5 of Discs is a card of worry. And I was like, that's a really interesting thing, because the topic that was on my mind was the topic of worry, because that's something, when you have high anxiety, you're going to start worrying about things. Whether those things are stuff that you truly need to worry about or not. We always worry about stuff that we don't need to worry about. It's human nature. And it's not anything that you don't want to get into a cycle of, I'm worrying about that and I shouldn't have. That's bad of me and I shouldn't do it. Like, you don't want to get into that cycle either, because then you start yelling at yourself for having thoughts, and it's like, well, we all have thoughts. We all have thoughts. We all have things that plague us. We all have that little voice that likes to say, yeah, but you're going to do this, but what if this thing's happened and it doesn't work out, And when I think about worry is something that tends to be, again, another Alan Wattsism, but he was talking about the way, what makes human beings unique in one way is the way in which we are aware of time. Now, you could say that animals are aware of time too. They're aware of time in a different way. And the way that animals are aware of time, you'll see, they sort of have an automatic instinct about what to do in certain seasons, where they might hibernate in the winter or fly south or whatever. And then you have the other ones who are then when spring comes, that's when kind of the mating rituals begin among the mating. Lord knows there's a lot of them going on outside. It's a veritable hotbed in my front yard and my side yard. I'll walk outside and, you're just like, what is this? What do I look like here? But it's spring. I mean, this is what happens. And so they do have that awareness of time in the sense of what's, but it's interesting because animals tend to know what the appropriate season is for something. They know when the right time is to do things. It's not like in the middle of winter, they're deciding this is when they're going to feather their nest and make their children. They kind of do things they have a sense of timing that's innate. With us, we have a very strong awareness of time, but we also have a very strong will. Okay, we have a very strong will to do things. And because we have a consciousness of time, most of our creation mythology, as I've said before, is based on time. To me, Joseph Campbell talks a little bit about this too, but Adam and Eve to me is not about the first sin in the garden. That's never the way I've looked at it, because I always compare that myth to the myth of Hesiod, which is not really the myth of the creation of mortals in this sense, but it's the myth of the creation of the universe, where Gaia and Uranus, Earth and Sky, are united and they're continually making these children that Uranus doesn't like, so he keeps shoving them back under the Earth, which is upsetting Gaia, because as one of my grad school professors had said, she said, well, yeah, just imagine if you were a woman trying to give birth and your husband kept trying to stick the baby back in, didn't want it to be, so she got very upset at this and asked one of her children to help her. And so, Kronos, who's Saturn, speaking of, volunteers and says, oh, I'll do it. And so she gives him a sickle. And weirdly, the sickle is shaped like the moon. So there's this idea, the moon that's one way of marking the cycles of time. Certainly there's people with lunar calendars and they have solar calendars. Calendars are a marking of time. And so he basically cuts off his father's, manhood, and it falls into the sea and it foams up, and there's certain giants and things that come out of it, but also the goddess Aphrodite, the goddess of love, is actually born from that act. But as I pointed out to people, as horrific as that act sounds, and you will find there's a lot of ancient mother goddess rituals around that kind of really, gruesome kind of scene when it comes to the male member. What it really is about, it's the idea that when Earth and Sky are separated, once there's a separation there, and they're separated by the god of time. So there's the idea that now you're in a space where life can actually exist, okay? Because when you're in a unified field, you're not in the field of time. You're in some other field, and so life as we know it, the life really, life and death are paired. You can't have one without the other. So the Adam and Eve story, what happens with that one is that you have Adam and Eve are they're both, they're created, and actually there's two different creation stories. There's the first one, there's actually 5 different creation stories in the Bible, okay? But let's just say if we start with the very first one, it just says male and female, he created them. And then another couple verses later, it's that he puts Adam to sleep and takes his rib out and makes Eve from that. So there are 2 different stories that are going, and actually they were written about 100 years apart. There's the Yahwist versions and the Elohist versions. And yeah, I do teach religion. So this is, there's these different versions, and they're written about 100 years apart. So the rib story is a little bit later, but nonetheless, whichever way it is, you've got Adam and Eve, and when they're initially in the garden walking with Yahweh, presumably, they are, or with the Elohim, because it is a plural. So you have this idea of these forces, these divine forces, and they're walking in the garden, and then that's when the serpent appears. Now, the serpent, as we know in most cultures, is also a symbol of time. It's a symbol of the circle of time. The Ouroboros, the snake that swallows its own tail. It's the idea of death and rebirth and the cycles of the way things that continually go. So what happens is the serpent, they're basically told they can eat of any tree except this one tree. And the name of the tree is interesting because it's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So what is that? That is the knowledge of. That's the knowledge of opposites. That's the knowledge of time. Okay? So but the serpent, and people treat it as a deception. But really, in the Gnostic version of that myth, that's actually the goddess Sophia in the serpent form, saying to them, trying to let them know that they are, because she feels that the garden is an illusion. It almost has it's not quite an Eastern flavor, but the idea is just that an illusion is created that that Yahweh is the only God. That's a whole other mythology there. But so when they eat of the fruit, their eyes are opened. Okay, their eyes are opened and they're able to see, because that's what the first thing that they do is they quote unquote cover their shame. So the first thing that Adam and Eve do is they cover up their private bits, and so and then of course Yahweh says to them, when they said, well, we were naked and we hid ourselves, and he says, who told you were naked? You know what I mean? They don't even know that. They don't know. You don't know anything in that space. But to have knowledge, to have rationality, to have a mind, to have an awareness of time is to be conscious. So, and to have that knowledge is to have the knowledge of opposites. And as I've talked about this before, this was another thing that I think the way Campbell had said it was, he said, the insight of Western religion is the insight of duality, of the fact that we perceive everything as separate and we perceive time and therefore we perceive death. In the East, it's the insight that transcends duality. So it's the idea that, yeah, everything appears to be dual, but that's an illusion because ultimately everything is united, right? So they're looking in two different directions at the same phenomenon, right? And looking at it in two different ways. So what happens when we get hung up on time is that we live in a space where we are continually, in some way, worried about death. Okay, now it doesn't have to mean that we're like, I think most people, there have been studies done of people at different age groups and their awareness of death and what they think about death. And generally you have people like in their 20s and who are younger, they're not thinking about death. I mean, they're just, usually before like the frontal lobes close up, people aren't thinking about death at all. They go out and do really weird and risky things, and they do it because, we live forever, like nobody has an awareness really of death until somebody close to you maybe passes away or something. Then people start to have an awareness of mortality. Or if a beloved pet passes away or something happens, then you have this awareness of somebody who's there and now is not there. Whatever that means, and then people start thinking about what that might mean. But even if we want to get away from the idea of literal loss and death in that sense, we can have all kinds of losses. When we enter puberty, for example, that's a first time. Whatever our childlike way of being was, whatever our imagination was, what our relationship was to our friends in school, when we enter the teen years and all those, the pituitary becomes active and everything becomes active, and we suddenly, the bodies change and the voices change and all this stuff changes, the relationships that we have to other people change too. All of a sudden now you start getting these kind of tribal things, the traditional school cliques, what groups do you belong to, and how are people facing off against each other, and how are they judging each other. And it's interesting because it comes in, and that people don't often recognize as a loss, because there's the idea, because what your childlike way was, now there's all of these social forces coming in all of a sudden, tearing all that down, tearing it apart. And now you feel like at least one thing you feel you have to worry about, getting into worries, is social approval, right? Now, as you get older and you become, because at that point you really don't know who you are yet. You still don't know who you are. And then there's the question of, do we ever really know who we are? But, but just the idea of what your identity is, what you want to be when you grow up, right? And that's another process that we go through. And as we go through those different changes in life, when we reach a point when we graduate from school, then maybe we go off to university for the first time. And then, which we might, not everybody does. Like I said, not everybody in my family did. I was the only one. But then that's another change in life. And then you graduate from that, and then there's another change. And you might go to grad school, you might do other things, you might go out and get your first job, you might meet people and get married. I mean, everybody has their own path. There's no one linear set of, okay, you have to have hit this milestone at this time, which some people do think that it is. They think, oh, well, I have to have achieved this by this date. I've had friends who have said, like, for example, oh, if I don't have a kid by the age of 35, then I'm just going to make it happen somehow. Like there's people who have certain goals for themselves regarding what they want. And I think Jung talks about this. We spend the first part of our lives trying to figure out where we fit into that social role. And that kind of starts at puberty. We'll be figuring out where we fit in. And then once we figure that out, and once we've done whatever it is that we've done, then we reach a point where we say, okay, is this all there is? And or things may happen, and oftentimes things that happen in our lives that may really shake us to our core. We're always afraid. We're always like, oh my gosh, I don't want that to happen. But a lot of times these changes, these transitions occur because they're trying to move us, to wake us up into a new state. There's the idea of, what was the phrase? It was a Donovan song too. First there's a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is. It's the idea that you are, you're establishing this thing, and then you realize this thing you've established, there's something illusory about it. That's that demythologization I talked about the other day. Okay, there's something illusory about it. You kind of, you you start to question it, you start to doubt it, and then it's like then there is one again, because you kind of break down anything about yourself that is false, and then you reestablish yourself in terms of being able to take your life experience and the things that have happened to you, and being able to look forward and make something new, not a repeat of the past. People could do that, but it's not like, okay, now I'm going to take up the mantle and do the same thing that this person did. That's not really how it goes. And our worries are about where we're going in the future and whether or not we're going to succeed. And we also looking back to the past and saying, did I make mistakes in the past? Did you ever lay awake at night and think about, that one time in 6th grade that you did something and oh God, I feel so stupid. And, we all do things like that, right? We all have moments where we feel that way. But it's really this constant negotiation with the shadow. And when you have when we're in a mentality where everything is split, where we're thinking about things in terms of difference, then we often tend to be split between the head and the heart. When we privilege the head, we're not really connected. And you'll find a lot of the times there's this sense of duty, or what's going to require social approval, or what you need to do, because obviously the way to success is to make a ton of money, right? That's what people will say, and trying to come across with different ways of saying, well, no, maybe happiness and abundance are not about these things. Maybe it's about other things. And there's a lot of pushback from that. There's a lot of pushback, not only from the head, but from society, being around us. What's going on in society, and that's it's very, again, because you're part of that collective. You can only, a lot of times especially when the collective is very anxiety ridden or angst ridden, or the things that maybe we feel or hold dear, we maybe feel like people are making fun of them or stepping on them, or if you think this, you must be stupid. The things that people do. People want validation, right? You want validation that you're on the right path, and you want validation that you are, that what you are and who you are is appreciated at least by somebody. And this is where a lot of our worry comes in. So the question then becomes, it's like, okay, so the goals really tend to focus on becoming solid in yourself, knowing who you are, and knowing that when other people criticize who you are, that that's just them projecting their stuff. That shouldn't change who you are. You should not have to say, oh, well, now I got to modify myself for that person. It shouldn't be a thing. There are people who do it again, but you're trying to get to this point of authenticity. So when we look at this idea, okay, if I bring it round to this again, the mind, because the mind is so aware of time, and the mind is so aware of ourselves almost on this continuum, which weirdly, it's like we think of it as an awareness, but it's actually kind of a false awareness, because things don't always work the way that we think that they do, or the way that maybe we're told that continuum should work, or the way it should look. And so oftentimes we need distractions. We need to do things. We need to sit down. Sometimes, and even sometimes the cards will tell you that. They'll be like, you know what, just go out and look at the stars. Go watch a funny movie. Go do something, and don't ruminate so much on things. Don't let the mind take over to the degree that it paralyzes you, or that it makes you feel like, it drains you of so much energy that you say, you know what, I can't, this is useless. I can't do anything. It's futile. It's pointless. Yeah, I could make this effort, but it's probably gonna fail anyway. You know what I mean? We get ourselves into these mindsets. And oftentimes this is the idea of, and it is true, sometimes if you even just, I have done that. I've had days where I've woken up and for some reason, and it could be any number of reasons, if I feel very down for some reason, and sometimes I don't even know why. Sometimes I'll just be like, okay, and that could be a lot of things, but so I just like, I'm just gonna move ahead with something. I just need to put the laundry away. I need to go downstairs and do you just do something. You just keep moving and you keep doing something. You move the body. And as the body moves, it's kind of like with exercise. You know when you feel like you're not feeling well and you're lethargic and you're like, okay, I should really get up and exercise, and you don't want to. But as soon as you get up and start doing something, then it's like the circulation flows, and then everything starts to flow in the way that it needs to. So yeah, so it's interesting. I think with worry and anxiety, I feel like a lot of it just comes out of this consciousness that we have, that we think it makes us almost divine in a certain way. That was the thing that the humanists would say. It was just like, oh well, our intellect puts us above the animal kingdom. It's just, but I said, but then we don't follow time. We want to subvert time. We want to do things out of time, and not when they're not the right way. And so the other aspect of the making tortillas is just fourth grade politics. Yeah, exactly. And we need to reach a point where we are just, like I said, sometimes it's just a matter of doing something unimportant just to put us in a space of realizing that we are, just to kind of to chill that out, because our tendency to want to take control over all this stuff comes from our worry our worry about all the stuff that could happen, all the stuff we're trying to be prepared for, right? And good morning, April. The things that we are prepared for, and the thing is, it's just, rather than just kind of letting things be and letting things be in their proper time. And there's we need to have a sense of, sometimes what I'm trying to say here is that sometimes there's a need here that for patience, okay? And sometimes there's things that we want to do, and we want to, and we're very, very energized, we want to do everything at the same time. It's just kind of, we look at things. Do you ever do that? Do you ever walk through the house and feel like you're setting out to go downstairs to do, in my case, downstairs, I have it downstairs, to do one thing. And on the way, I'm like, oh yeah, I have to pick that up. Oh yeah, I got to go through that. Oh yeah, and as you're working your way down, it takes you like an hour to get to the thing you were going to do downstairs, because you're multitasking as you go. Or you go to bring stuff upstairs, and then you carry this big thing, and you're like, I can't carry all this right now. I mean, we kind of do things because when we have a very intense burst of energy, we want to make the most of it. I mean, people who are certainly generators in human design or manifesting generators are people who want to be doing stuff all the time. And so that restless energy, but it comes in fits and starts. You often find you'll have a big burst of energy, and then all of a sudden you're just like completely drained and don't want to do anything. And then on those days, then you worry that like, well, what's wrong with me? I should be up doing stuff. I'm being lazy. I'm just sitting here. We get ourselves into these different cycles of worry, but a lot of them center around time, and a lot of them center around either not wanting to do things at the right time, or they center around our worry about what's going to happen, or a worry about what has happened and whether we did that right or whether we screwed it up. Or usually we're worried that we screwed it up because there's a tendency of the mind to focus on the negative too. There's this inner critic that says, I did it this, I did these 5 things right, but look at that one thing that I did wrong, and that's all you're going to think about. So it's interesting, but sometimes I think the lesson of that particular card, because I always find myself thinking about that card a lot, the making tortillas card, is because it's just the idea that when we are worried, sometimes we just need to do something physical and something mindless to calm the mind. to just focus all of that energy that we're spending worrying about crap that's never going to happen, and worry about the mind. So, have I been listening to you? Well, I was just talking about that at the beginning, April, because it was just like, yeah, it just feels like this week, I was talking about the planetary alignment that seems to have everybody kind of like, really in a state of high anxiety. And and me as well. And I know there's some other people on here who've said that they've also been in a state of high anxiety. So it's kind of like looking at it like, well, where is this worry coming from, and how do we ground that and kind of put it in perspective, right? And again, a lot of it just has to do with our relationship to time. So really the only answer that they have is to stay in the present, which, yeah, we hear that all the time, and we're like, yeah, whatever, stay in the present. But to really, really do that, to really just kind of focus your awareness on just what you're doing right now, because that's the thing that you have control over, is what you're doing right now, and again, it's not always easy, especially if we know, oh, something's due tomorrow or something's looming tomorrow, and I don't have a response to it yet. One of the things I learned from my guru, when I used to do her programs, we would, everybody was so excited to do the guru's program, and the program was always chaos. I mean, they did have a certain level of organization, because there were thousands of people who would come to these programs. And we would go, and we already knew what our jobs were, and we would go in to do our jobs, and inevitably everything got effed up right from the beginning, okay? Things would go wrong. We would bring things, oh, we didn't have the right things, and you got to try to go out and try to get the right things. Oh, this didn't work, that didn't work. Oh, somebody forgot this, and they didn't do that. Then you run into somebody who will start yelling at you for no reason, and, everybody experienced this, and it got to a point for me that where you'd come in with a specific job, and then someone would start fighting you about doing your job. I mean, it was some of the most ridiculous stuff would happen on these things. I stopped doing them after a while, because to me, I was like, I spend a lot of money to take out a hotel room in New York City for the night to be able to work this program. And if literally I'm going to go in and not being able to do anything at the end of the day because the guru has screwed up, well, she does it. They only say that the guru is the one who does it. Now, whether she's doing it, but the thing is, when you're in that space of working with the master, they do screw things up deliberately. They test you. You'll have people just come in and start yelling at you for no reason, and you're just like, literally. I mean, my Atmakaraka is Mars, my soul planet. So my first thing is I'm ready to fight. Don't get in my face. I'm just, we're just trying to do. Everyone's just trying to work together, but somehow nobody can work together because everybody's, But the whole idea is that it's bringing up all of this stuff that we do. And really what she'll say, that the guru will say about that is, well, yeah, but the idea is that you stay in your center through all of that. That's life. That's the chaos. That's the drama that's going on around you. You need to stay in your spot. And it's like a Zen thing. When something happens, like the old things about, the Zen student, monastery, student, coming in and, has their tasks every day. They have to sweep, they have to do this, whatever. And then have the master come out and suddenly start beating them with the stick. And now they feel like they're like this all the time because they have to defend themselves. And when they finally just give up and go, all right, whatever, the master's going to beat me, whatever, and then they just kind of, and then that's the point at which their training begins, because that's the point at which they said, okay, you've relaxed your sense of like doing this all the time. And sometimes I think we get slammed with things repeatedly because life is trying to say, hey, loosen up the grip here, loosen up the grip, and just, we got good things for you, loosen up the grip. So, all right, already 7:10, and I have not talked about the reading yet. So those of you who have joined late, welcome. Okay, our first middle card here is Success, Riding the Tiger, okay? I've had this card before. 6 of Wands energy. So yeah, this is a great card. This is leadership, this is victory, this is accomplishment, this is, I think in the midst of all this, the idea that, okay, we've achieved something. Even in the chaos, we have somehow prevailed in some way, or people have looked to us as somebody who has prevailed, whether we totally feel that we do or not. Because our inner feeling, of which we're not really conscious of, is the fighting card. I'm just talking about fighting, right? This is this energy. This is Knight of Clouds energy, or Knight of Swords. And the fighting card has to do with when we fight, it's about, it's the way in which we resist what's going on. We resist what's going on because we're on our own timetable. And, the universe has its own timetable, and we don't like that one. It's like, no, I don't like that. Now, the thing is, if you went along with the universe's timetable, and that was the thing about the guru's programs, somehow in the end, everything would get done the way it was supposed to get done. And sometimes additional problems would be solved that you didn't think were going to get solved. And it was interesting because, and that's what my friend Martha always used to say. She would be like, things would happen and she'd be like, all right, this is just a test of the Amma broadcasting system. She would just be, because, but it really, really would test your patience. But in the end of the day, it didn't work out the way you thought it was going to, but it worked out. And that's kind of the thing. It's just kind of like, this will work out, but we always think we know what the continuum's going to be. And sometimes we have to let go of that by doing something unimportant, right? Yeah, experiencing. That's the external feeling of which we're aware. This is the Three of Wands. And of course, Three of Wands is also, this is about collaborating. Now here in this particular card, this is a woman hugging a tree. But the idea is that connecting with nature, connecting with the heart space, rooting yourself to the earth. I mean, these are the things you want to connect to. We start this fighting is all air energy, okay? This is cloud energy. This is all the stuff that goes on up here that drives us bonkers. And so really this is about taking that energy and rooting it back in something, okay? Rooting it back in just the day-to-day. And it's like, okay, if you don't know what the heck's going to happen with something, okay, well, just focus on the things that are in front of you. Just focus on the things you need to do right now. Even though you may be impatient with them, focus on those things. And yeah, because we have this understanding card. And again, this one's come up recently as well. This is the card of freedom. This is the cage that we think we're in. But we've always been free. A lot of times we want to cage ourselves in the same old routines and the same old patterns and the same old ways of doing things. And even though doing things differently would make us free and would make us more, would make us happier, and whatever life brings us, we would be able to deal with, we still just somehow feel that that's not the case, and that we have to push back against it. We have to. It's kind of the feeling if you've ever moved into a new house or something like that. The first time you move into a space, even if it's a space you really, really like, you've got the boxes everywhere and everything, and you're just very frustrated because you don't feel secure. You don't feel like you're in your space somehow. And, you're anxious to get unpacked, but, you can't maybe do it all, or maybe you've got to wait for movers to bring something, or you've got to do, and that, again, that's that liminal space, that transitional space that's why I do transition life coaching, right? This is what I work on with people. It's just being in that transitional space and trying to figure out, okay, how do you put your feet on the ground here, and how do you just flow with whatever's going on? And some of that does require a certain modicum of patience, of being able to see where you are, but also recognizing when you're free. I mean, you really have that. Generally, it comes down to really having more options than you think. We fight to kind of keep things the way they were before, but maybe that way is not going to work anymore. Maybe that's why, with these eclipses that came up, I keep getting eclipse cards a lot when I do readings too, and it's like, the eclipse just basically says, yeah, you're not doing things the same way anymore. Life's going to be different now. But our outcome card is nice. The outcome is flowering. Okay, so yeah, this is the awkward growth process, right? This is the way that things are growing around us, and so we're having our success, and things are flowering. We are free. Okay, but our mind is fighting us and telling us no. I have to worry about this and I have to worry about that, and oh my God, this thing and that thing, and it's really just a matter of just letting go and experiencing, right? Of just being in the world and allowing things to flower. Trust is something that we just don't have in the universe and in the process. And we actually have to kind of learn to trust. And, that kind of takes us back to the things that we do to try to alleviate worry. Now, mind you, that's not a form of escapism. That's not a form of saying like, well, I'm just going to close my eyes and ears and pretend none of this is going on. You're definitely very aware of what's going on, but you're not, you may be aware like, okay, there's this problem. I haven't solved it yet. I don't know how to solve it. So let me focus on something else. Because sometimes too, it's also kind of like if they talk about sleeping on it, right? You go to sleep, sometimes you'll have a dream, or you'll just wake up with a thought in your head. And that will solve the problem. You can set that intention before you go to bed. Say, okay, I don't know how to fix this. I'm going to sleep on it. And I know sometimes it keeps us from sleeping too. That's another problem. But if you do that, just kind of say, okay, I'm putting this on the table off the table until tomorrow morning. And then sometimes something will come to us. It solves itself in a lot of ways. Okay, and I just pulled an essential oil card for us as well. We have the inspiring card, inspiring oil. Again, I don't know what blends these are supposed to be, but the key word here is freedom. The trigger statement is I have no choice. Yeah, I'm stuck. I have no choice. I have to do things this way. I have to do this, do that. The true statement is I create my day and my life. And it is the time to play. Do something different today to shift your routine. Well, isn't that interesting, right? Yeah, and weirdly, it's so funny because I've had moments this week where I have just been so stressed out about certain things that have come on, and when I do a reading, I'm expecting to see all of these cards, and I just keep getting the cards for play. It's like, yeah, okay, just and you're like, what do you mean play? I don't have time for that, but that's it. It's you're playing a game. You're playing an elaborate D&D game. Only without the dice. And you figure you make a game out of it. So say, okay, what would I do? That's Gemini energy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that very playful kind of energy. So treating it more as a game, or treating it more as a puzzle. But not allowing ourselves to get into that Eight of Swords energy, where we're trapped, where we mentally get stuck. And the reality becomes that, if you sit down, take some time to meditate and sit back, and if you focus your awareness on the things that you're really freaked out about, you say, okay, well, what's the worst that's going to happen here? And is the worst happening? And that oftentimes we realize that the worst is not happening. And then when you kind of relax a little bit and just say, well, that means I have to do this, this, and this. It's like, well, maybe you don't. You need to sit back and use that mental energy also to think about what your options are. What are the options? What are the possibilities here? What might I be able to do differently? Even if initially you think, oh, that sounds crazy, but maybe it's crazy, maybe it's not. So. Interesting. Anyway, I've run very long today, but a lot of you joined me today, so thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate all of you. If you missed the first part of this, obviously this will be available on my transition.life.coaching page on Instagram, and also I will upload it at some point today onto YouTube. I also have a podcast to record. Oh, you are welcome. And I podcast to record today, and I have I'm finishing a life assessment, and I've got to go do some mailing today. This was poignant. Okay. Oh wow. Okay. Have a great day. Yeah, you too, April. And good. I'm glad that this resonated with you. But you're welcome, Sudha. And all of you, have an awesome rest of your day. And like I said, I will be back tomorrow. What is it? Friday now. So yay, it's Friday. I think. I will see all of you tomorrow morning if you want to join me. Take care now. Bye bye.